Imagine a fortress built to hold a nation's deepest secrets. To destroy it, you don't need an invading army. You need to convince the guards that someone on the inside is already giving away the blueprints. The resulting paranoia will cause the fortress to tear itself apart from the inside. In the late 1980s, a teenager in Melbourne, Australia, began testing a similar theory. Going by the handle Mendax, Julian spent his nights bypassing the security of heavily guarded networks, eventually finding his way into data systems operated by the US military. He operated under a strict ethical code. He would observe, and he would share the information he found, but he would never alter data or crash the systems he infiltrated. This animated diagram represents a sprawling government network. Through his incursions, Assange realized that states were consolidating massive amounts of classified data into centralized digital hubs. If you pull out the central hub, the entire power structure is suddenly highly vulnerable. Assange integrated these early technical incursions into a global geopolitical philosophy. He viewed centralized information as a structural weakness that could be exploited to shift the balance of power between the state and the public. By 2006, he scaled this hacker ethos into a global operation by founding WikiLeaks. The platform allowed whistleblowers to submit classified media through secure, anonymous drops. Assange outlined his strategy in a manifesto. He argued that you can punish unjust organizations by making them terrified of their own internal communications. This flowchart illustrates his theory. Once a leak occurs, leaders restrict access and cut off their own information flows out of fear. He called this the secrecy tax. By inducing organizational paranoia, the target is forced to create artificial bottlenecks and isolated silos. The resulting friction causes system-wide cognitive decline, making the organization highly inefficient. The theory was tested early on. In 2009, a report revealed an oil firm named Trafigura dumped toxic waste in the Ivory Coast. The company secured a strict gag order to prevent British media from reporting on it. WikiLeaks simply published the original document online, completely bypassing the court injunction. By providing a digital bypass for these court-ordered gag orders, Assange designed WikiLeaks to disrupt the legal and communicative mechanisms that states and corporations use to maintain internal secrecy. In 2010, WikiLeaks escalated its operations from exposing corporate scandals to directly challenging the military-industrial complex. The vulnerability came from the inside. U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning accessed vast databases of classified military information, transmitting them directly to WikiLeaks. In April, Assange bypassed traditional media gatekeepers entirely. He held a press conference and released decrypted footage of a U.S. airstrike in Baghdad, exposing the deaths of civilians and Reuters journalists. This was followed by the Afghan and Iraq war logs, hundreds of thousands of Army field reports detailing the grim realities of the conflicts. Months later, WikiLeaks published 250,000 unredacted U.S. diplomatic cables, exposing international espionage and backroom geopolitical maneuvers. The secrecy tax was functioning exactly as designed. The U.S. government was publicly exposed and suddenly forced to scrutinize its entire internal digital infrastructure. The state reacted rapidly. Federal prosecutors convened a grand jury in Virginia to investigate Assange, while international arrest warrants were issued for his capture. Facing extradition, Assange breached his bail conditions in June of 2012 and sought asylum inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Confined to a 320-square-foot room, he continued to direct WikiLeaks. In 2013, he actively assisted NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden to flee the United States and avoid capture by U.S. law enforcement. The escalation continued. During the 2016 election, WikiLeaks published internal Democratic National Committee emails, revealing party favoritism. The following year, they released Vault 7, a massive cache detailing the CIA's highly classified hacking and surveillance tools. The retaliation was severe. A security firm hired to protect the embassy was secretly recording Assange's daily activities, legal meetings, and conversations, allegedly providing that surveillance to the CIA. Senior intelligence officials even discussed potential plans to kidnap or assassinate him. In April 2019, Ecuador revoked his asylum. British police entered the embassy, arrested Assange, and transferred him to Belmarsh Prison, where he faced an indictment under the US Espionage Act, carrying a potential sentence of 175 years. US authorities prioritized the physical apprehension of the publisher, shifting resources towards a years-long legal effort to secure his extradition. Assange spent 5 years in a high-security cell for 23 hours a day. Medical experts and UN officials reported a severe deterioration in his physical and psychological health during this prolonged isolation. The legal standoff finally broke in June 2024. Under pressure from a pending High Court appeal, US prosecutors agreed to a plea deal. Assange admitted to a single felony count of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified information in exchange for a sentence of time already served. He was released from Belmarsh, boarded a charter flight to a U.S. federal courthouse in Saipan to finalize the agreement, and immediately flew home to Australia a free man. Looking at the 14-year timeline, a question remains. Did the secrecy tax actually work against the United States? On a purely mechanical level, it succeeded. Assange forced the exposure of covert military actions, backroom diplomacy, and surveillance operations, dragging the internal files of the state into the public domain. But the United States exacted a brutal countertax. For publishing classified data, Assange endured 14 years of confinement, extradition battles, and extreme isolation, a highly visible warning to any future whistleblowers. Assange successfully demonstrated that a single actor can force the release of a nation's most sensitive data. However, the 14-year campaign against him proved that the state's most effective defense remains the sustained application of its physical and legal